everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I'm Jody Grunwald. This week, my guest is Pam Ahern, founder of Edgar's Mission in Lancefield, Victoria, Australia. Pam shares her incredible journey from packing lollies, as she calls them, in a factory, and being a champion equestrian, to providing shelter and direct care for homeless, abused, injured, and abandoned farm animals. Kindness is truly at the heart of everything Pam does. When a little pig named Edgar Alan came into Pam's life, it brought her down a path she never imagined. This is truly an incredible story, and one that even involves the actor James Cromwell from the hit movie Babe. Pam gave up her full-time job, hung up her riding boots, and dedicated her life to the protection of farm animals. Why, you may ask? Well, you will need to listen in to hear how Pam built the 153-acre sanctuary that is currently caring for 500 farm animal residents. Every animal that comes through the sanctuary doors is given a special name, treated as an individual, and surrounded by so much love. Many that arrive are in need of immediate and very special care. The one thing that is truly amazing is how some of the animals support their counterparts who are in need of that additional help and support. You will hear about vet nurses Ruby the dog and Tabitha the cat. You will fall in love with Calvin Swine, Mr. Invisible, Captain Kirk the Rooster Smudge, and so many more as you watch them through their videos via Facebook and Instagram. Pam is also the proud Australian ambassador for World Animal Day and was a 2014 Victorian Local Hero finalist in the Australian of the Year Awards. On top of all of that, she is also the author of the book The Gift of Kindness, True Stories of Rescue Farm Animals. Her mantra is, if we could live happy and healthy lives without harming others, why wouldn't we? Visit edgarsmission.org.au for more information. Please subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. Stream this podcast on all streaming sites. Like us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. And visit todayisthedayliveit.com for more information about this podcast and other services available through Today is the Day. I am also the CEO and co-founder of the Zach G. Applauder Kids Foundation, connecting children and young adults ages 7 to 22 who meet the financial needs requirements with ongoing lessons in dance, acting, instrumental music, and vocal instruction. For more information, visit applauderkids.org. The views expressed by all Today's the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and share this podcast. You never know who needs to hear the stories shared here. Have a great week, everyone.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald, and today, like I always say, I interview the most incredible changemakers from around the world. And today I am interviewing Pam Ahern. Pam, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. It's morning here, and it's a beautiful day.
Yes, a beautiful picture right behind you, too. Is that Edgar's Mission behind you?
That's our beautiful sanctuary. We are so blessed to live in this most incredible part of the world and do what we do.
So let me tell everybody who you are. Pam is a lifelong animal lover and cut her teeth on cat and dog rescue and became a champion equestrian. However, everything changed when a tiny piglet, the eminent Edgar Alan pig, trotted into her life in 2003 and led her down a path she'd never imagined. She gave up her full-time paying job, hung up her riding boots, and dedicated her life to the protection of farm animals. With Edgar firmly at its heart, Pam built the sanctuary from the ground up and set in motion outreach programs that would bring farmed animals out of the dark unknown and into the public view. Pam is also the proud Australian ambassador for World Animal Day and was the 2014 Victorian Local Hero finalist in the Australian of the Year Awards. Incredible. And lastly, I'll mention that I want everybody to know your website, which is edgarsmission.org.au. So Pam, everybody, comes to us from Australia, which is incredible. And as we talked about, the view is just unbelievable. So Pam, so much to go over and talk about. As I've been reading your bio here, what was the job you hung up? I'm just curious before you went over to Edgar's Mission.
I had a few jobs on the run through, but the last job I was actually working in a factory packing boxes of lollies.
Oh my goodness, that is so funny. Look, very different job. It
is a very different job. It was an honest living. I got paid well. Got to keep my clothes on. Didn't have to touch body parts, so it worked pretty well for me.
I love it. So, where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the same area where the farm is right now?
No, not at all. I actually started in Melbourne, in a little tiny suburb of Melbourne, in a little even tinier house with really not too many animals inside apart from our family pets, our two cats, Blackie and Tiny, and our lovely goofy Labrador who was named Laddie. And I used to spend hours in the backyard with the dog Laddie. And I loved animals and I loved nature. I was fascinated with the natural world. I would follow bees around for hours on end with Laddie, and occasionally Laddie used to mistake me for a tree, but that was okay. When you're a kid, you don't mind about those things. I think a bit of an induction for working with animals, and I was always a very happy child with nature, and that's really something that stayed with me forever. And I think it's actually what drew me to the country and where I needed to be.
So when you were growing up, what kind of child were you? Were you outgoing? Were you shy? Who was Pam back then?
I think Pam is the the beginning of who I am today. I think, we take with us all those memories, and this is something I see with animals. We are a product of everything that's happened to us, and some things we actually realize they impact upon us and others that they don't. One of my early lessons in life was when I stretched out to pat the family cat, and I remember my mum always saying be kind, and that those sage words have really guided my hand and my heart ever since. I was an incredibly shy child, and I am an incredibly shy person today. I would much rather be out there sitting with the animals and standing at the front championing their cause. But the one thing that I hate more than standing in front of people and talking about animals and trying to change hearts and minds is what's happening to animals right here, right now on our watch. And it's one of the reasons why I always wear a cap. I'm known as the lady in the hat, because it's my little Linus blanket, and I like to hide underneath it, and that protects me from the world. So I was always a very probably introverted child, and really happy to just be on my own and make my own way in the world. And so I do actually go beyond my comfort zone every day, advocating for animals, and even through the stories that I write, it's almost sharing my soul and putting it out there, and then people reading it. But again, if what I do can change the world for animals, it's something that I am prepared to take on. I always remember my mother saying very early on that the worst thing you can say to Pam is you can't. And it wasn't because I was a belligerent child or a naughty child. I always wanted to be a pain in the neck. It's that I was just a really little industrious child, and I love to challenge. I love to challenge then as I love a challenge now. That indefinable moment when you say to yourself, what if? An example of that was that I wanted a pony. As a little kid, I saw a picture of a horse and thought, wow, what an incredible animal. I'd love to climb on their back and take me places that only a young girl could ever dream of going. But we were city folk, and my family weren't particularly well off, and our backyard was small and was never going to accommodate a pony. But my mother saying, never say you can't to Pam. So I got my scooter, intrepid fighter that I was. My mother wouldn't even let us have a bicycle because they were way too dangerous. So I got my scooter. I took the wheels off my scooter. I got a pair of my mum's pantyhose, and I tied a tie to each end, and I made that into a saddle, and I rode the kitchen stool around the house for hours, and then clunkety, clunkety, clunk. I had a ball. My mum not so. All the noise I made and not having any pantyhose, she took me down to the local pony club. And that was where my relationship with larger farm animals began. And it was also when I started to challenge myself with what I could actually achieve. Here's this little kid from the suburbs who didn't have a particularly horsey family that went on to become a champion equestrian of Australia. And that was my childhood dream and beyond. And I always thought that was where I was going to land, on a horse's back. And that was what I was going to do till I was a 99-year-old lady and just fall off riding under a tree one day. But that was not to be. When Edgar came into my life, he did take me in the direction that I didn't imagine, even though I'd always loved animals. But I realize now that those years spent with the horses was just a training ground for what I do now, learning so much about animal behavior. If I didn't learn to read the horse as a young child, I would get kicked, bugged, bitten, stomped on, all of those other sorts of things. So I actually learned very early to start to read animal behavior, but also what I was capable of. Someone said to me very young in my career, you'll never be a good rider, Pam, because you're too short. Well, that didn't go very well for them. But it wasn't that I wanted to prove them wrong. I just wanted to prove what I could do. And I remember when I'd go to horse competitions and I wouldn't have the right gear, and I had this scruffy little pony. I never, ever set out to be my best. I really didn't have a competitive bone in my body against others. My goal was always, and that's why I try and instill in kids, is that to be your best. If you try every day to be your best, then you will be a winner. But if you use others as your yardstick, you're going to set yourself for fail, because there'll only be one winner. And then that's deflating. But if you go out and hey, today didn't do my best today, but hey, can I learn from that? What opportunities can I take from this? Now, mistakes really are opportunities to be better. And that's really what has guided me through my equestrian career and Edgar's mission, and every day challenging myself to actually try and be a better version of myself, and find that best in humanity. And hopefully it's going to help animals, will inspire others as well.
Oh, absolutely. And what you said is just so key, is that it's not about being competitive against someone else. It's about bettering yourself and being the best version of yourself every day. And unfortunately, in life and in society, many times we're always wanting to win, but it's not about the win. It's about bettering ourselves to feel better about ourselves. And I think that's such an important piece. And you talk about being shy, but you have such important messages to share. So I think it's so great that you're still willing to come out and talk on podcasts and things like that, and share all the things that you've been through, because I think your growth has been truly incredible, to go from really, playing with animals to then taking care of so many. So you became an equestrian, you were riding horses. And then all of a sudden, what happened? Because that was you were putting lollipops in boxes, right? So at some point, you went from that to having a huge farm and taking care of all of these incredible animals. So what happened in between now and then, or then and now?
Although the epiphany to become an animal activist or really a vegan, that was an overnight thing. But my transition into being the person I am today, it was a gradual thing. I think it was just an ever evolving thing. I remember, starting out through cats and dogs, and I was involved in cat and dog rescue, was a foster care for them, would help with wildlife when they're in trouble, and getting into wildlife shelters and rehabilitation and then returning them to the wild. Became a very big part of who I was. When my mother and I moved to the country, the town that we lived in was Kilmore. Dodgy name for a town to start an animal sanctuary, but we contacted the local pound and found out what happened to their abandoned cats and dogs, and they were just shot down at the local tip, and we were horrified about that. So Mum and I started the Central Highlands Animal Shelter, and this was way before social media and the internet and any of those things. And we would take in the local cats and dogs that would otherwise have been killed, and we'd have them desexed at our own cost and try and find homes for them. But even before then, there was this passion for caring animals. And I remember seeing something in the paper. It was a little advertisement. It was for products that weren't tested on animals. So I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. If I've got toothpaste here and toothpaste there, one's tested on animals and one's not tested on animals, I could make an enormous statement about the world I wanted to live in by buying the one that wasn't tested on animals. So I sent away for the list, and it came with all the products and household things and cosmetics that weren't tested on animals. But awesome. And that would get changed and updated every so often, because new products came on board and companies changed ownership and ethics shifted. And then one time when the newsletter came out, there was a little ad in there for an anti-fur rally in Melbourne. I thought, fur is cool. We don't need to wear fur anymore. Lots of other things we can clothe ourselves with. So I rang up about going along to the anti-fur rally. And as I mentioned, I was incredibly shy. I'm really nervous about going along, but I wanted to do more to help the animals of this world. And the conversation I had with the lady that day really founded my animal activism. And I was talking to the lady, and it was being organised by Animal Liberation. And I said, I'd like to come along to the anti-fur rally, but I eat meat. Is that okay? And she said, look, what you do is your call. But what I want you to do is to think about what's on your table and how it gets there. Will you do that for me? Oh, yes. So I did. I went along to the anti-fur rally wearing my leather shoes and leather belt and woolen skirt. And I was listening to all the conversations that were buzzing around, just hovering around, not wanting to mingle too much. And this book kept coming up all the time, Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. I was curious, love reading, have always been an avid reader. And I think that's something my mother instilled in me. So I got a hold of the book. I was a bit nervous because it had the word liberation in front of it. And my dad had warned me about the liberationists, the wackos, the terrorists, the communists, the hippies that were going to ruin the world. Some of them are my best friends now, but it had the word animal in it. So I was hooked. So I started reading the book, and I wasn't very far into the book where Peter Singer was talking about a time when he was in England, and he was taken to the local chapter of the RSPCA by some mutual friends because he thought they'd get on well, and they were getting on well about animals and how they could better the world for animals. And it came time for afternoon tea, and ham sandwiches were served. And Peter Singer thought, well, that's really odd. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's got a point. Here I was championing the cause of animals, eating them and expecting people to take me seriously.
Mm.
Overnight, I became a vegan. I wasn't a particularly good vegan because someone down the track told me the word is actually vegan. You've been pronouncing it wrong, Pam. That's how isolated I was. This is over 30 years ago. You know, the only non-dairy milk was this powder stuff you mixed up in a bowl. It was disgusting. But for me, there was no way I was going back because I knew what the ramifications of me drinking dairy meant for the mama cow. And as much as I love that milk, I realized that mama cow loved her baby calf so much more. But it also reminded me with my discussion with the dear lady at the end of the phone that day is of being non-judgmental to others and engaging people in conversations rather than repelling them. And that comes through with our activism, through the writing that we do, encouraging people, speaking to the goodness of the human heart, because that is something that it's why I get up every single day of the week. You know, the bad that's happening in the world, within each and every one of us dwells that heart that is pure and good. We have just become so disconnected between the choices we make and how they impact upon others, and the others can be people, animals, or the planet. And when we can get people to meet at that common ground of kindness, that is when change will happen and will be long-lived, like it was for me having that really, really crappy non-dairy milk to pursue, because that's what I believed in. And unless you really believe in it, you know, I have no authority to tell people what to do or what not to do. And even if I do, I've not got any guarantee that they'll do it. But if some way we can encourage people to make those connections, and they will live their beliefs for whatever stage they are at their journey of life. And that's really been my guiding principle for what I do.
Well, it's a phenomenal guiding principle. And I think the story is so important. And I think, you know, vegans 30 years ago, it wasn't popularity of it and the reason for it, people were not really understanding as much as I think they are now. You know, I know my daughter personally is a vegan as well. You know, and I think it's really important for people to try, you know, some try it, they go back. Others don't really know. It's, you know, it shouldn't be about a fad. It needs to be about the reasons that you just said, you know, that all of those reasons need to matter. And so now you did all of that, and you became a vegan before Edgar's mission came about, right?
Oh, well before. And then I started looking at ways to, you know, increase my advocacy for animals. And I started working with Animals Australia, which is the peak animal protection body in Australia. They were nowhere near the impact that they have today, but still they were the peak body back then as well. And they were working on a campaign called the Save Babe campaign. So most people like me grew up taking great heart that our society also care deeply about animals. We've enshrined it in legislation. In Australia, it's called the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. I'm sure you've got something similar over there. And it's a piece of legislation that says what we can and can't do to animals, on the acknowledgement that these animals can suffer. We don't have the prevention of cruelty to computers or houses or cars or bicycles because they can't suffer, but animals can. But the more I learned, I realized that when it comes to our treatment of animals, we really have been guilty of playing favorites. We don't treat animals on their ability to want to experience the world and all of her magic, or want to hang out with their friends, or even stay with their babies and family. We treat animals on the shape they have taken, our familiarity we have with them, and the intended use we have of them. Nothing to do with who that animal is. And therein has been our fault to their suffering. Yeah. We have these things called codes of practice for every animal who's farmed for food and fibre in Australia. Codes of practice cover all those different species. Without these codes of practice, what we are doing to farmed animals in Australia today would be illegal. People don't know about that. One of the great things about our country and yours as well is that our legislation reflects public thought. It doesn't drive it. So what that means, our legislation can change when new information comes along, when kinder information comes along, when science informs us of different things. We can change that legislation to reflect this. It's not carved in stone. So this code of practice for pig farming was being reviewed in 2003. Awesome. This was a golden opportunity to raise the plight of pigs across the country. How do we do that as a not-for-profit charity with limited funds and nowhere near the voice Animals Australia has today? As the universe had it, James Cromwell, who was famous for the hit movie Babe, happened to be in the country at the time making a film. We thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could get James, who was so synonymous with Babe, It even got him an Oscar nomination, to get him on board to help raise awareness about the campaign. And there was a really, really big ask that we could even get in touch with this Hollywood actor. And if we did, would he help us? James is the most amazing human being who couldn't do enough to help. He does a lot of work in the States for animals and also for humanity as well, which just proves that caring for humans and animals is not mutually exclusive. James came on board. We're going to have a lead article in one of our leading Australian newspapers. We needed a pig for a photo shoot. We approached one of the children's farms and they said, yep, that's fine. $150, you can have the pig for the photo shoot. And I thought, I have a little bit of a problem with children's farms as well, because I don't think the messages are clear and consistent with the children about what happens to the animals. Was living in the country at the time with a property. I had an idea pig would be kind of cool. That was when Edgar Alan pig trotted into my life for the photo shoot. The photo shoot went so amazingly well. I only had Edgar for one day. James said, why don't we do an action on the steps of Parliament House in Melbourne, where he'll march up the steps of Parliament House with Edgar trotting by his side and demand a better deal for pigs. Well, this is great. This is really wonderful. I only had Edgar for a day. And then the reality started to kick in and I realized, I'm actually now really going to have to get this pig comfortable with walking on the lead in public in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world. So down to my local park in Kilmore, I went with my little doggy one side and my little piggy the other side. And what happened next absolutely blew me away. People came from everywhere. They were stopping their cars. They were politely lining up, going, what's the go with the pig? This gave me an opportunity to tell people what was happening to animals just like Edgar. And Edgar, all he did was act naturally, and he just did it so beautifully. You know, while I could speak to people's minds, Edgar just oinked his way right into their hearts, reminding them that's where he needs to be. And that got me thinking that a sanctuary for these animals, where animals like Edgar could live and they could be ambassadors for the not so fortunate animals who will never ever know kindness. Saving one pig is damn awesome for that pig, but for the other pigs who will never know kindness, that is a tragedy. So I tried to marry the two of them, and that's in the name Edgar's mission. A mission as in a sanctuary for these animals, but our mission is kindness, to create that kinder world that we all need, not just animals but humans as well, where we can live as one. You don't have to goddamn go out and love your neighbor. Just don't be horrible to them. And that's really become the greater mission, and that kindness really, you know, I try and eke it out through everything that I do.
You know, I think one of the reasons that I connected with you, so I connected, and the kindness piece. So my father had this saying, people asked him what religion he was, and he would always say, I practice the religion of kindness. And they would go, no, but what religion are you? And he goes, I said, I practice the religion of kindness. That's my religion. So as I was scrolling through Facebook, Pam, I was looking at another video, and then when I pulled up, it was something that, because I didn't know about Edgar's mission, right? So it's something that pulled up on social media, and it had something written with kindness. And that's what made me click on it, because that reminded me of my dad, who always talked about it. And so that's how I found you. That's how I found Edgar's mission. And it came from the word kindness, but also the amazing pictures, right? And the videos and the tremendous, I mean, I look every night, and when I looked at your page, I couldn't believe the crazy amount of followers you have and what you've started and created, and now learning more about where it all came from, right? I think that one of the things I like to do through this podcast too, Pam, is to tell people who are feeling stuck or they don't know what direction to go in, that sometimes it does find you if you're open to it. And it sounds like somehow it came your way and came into your path as well. Not that you were looking for it, because it sounds like you were doing lots of other things, and then this just walked into your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the last time I won we have a thing in Australia called the Gary O, and it's like the Melbourne Cup, the biggest thing you can win of equestrian, and I just won it. And I was trotting around the arena incredibly proud of what I've been able to achieve. Of this little, it was a failed racehorse. I got him for nothing. He was skin and bone when I got him, and I built him up. It's a beautiful animal, and it was a lovely way to reward my saving him. And I was trotting around the arena, and all the accolades were coming. I was incredibly chuffed and proud of what I'd achieved, but this sadness came over me, because I realized this was the last time I was going to do this. this was the last time it was time for me to get down off my high horse and really champion the cause of animals. I no longer ride horses. My relationship has certainly changed with them. I still think they're the most amazing, majestic animal on this earth. It's actually quite funny because in my equestrian career, I always wanted a palomino, the golden coloured horse, and I never got one. But we have a rescued palomino at the sanctuary. She's this dwarf miniature pony. He's got these incredibly crooked legs and this big domey head, and she's absolutely beautiful. I've named her Snoopy, and I think it's really quite touching that I got my palomino, and she's just beautiful. She will never ever win a ribbon in the show ring, and she doesn't have to, because she wins them daily in my heart. I just think she's the most incredible pony, and her resilience inspires me, as does the resilience of all the animals here. You know what they've been through. And their tenacity to keep trying to hang in there when they've got every reason to not. They still keep trying to live, and that's just amazing.
So then how did you go from, the one pig? By the way, how big was the pig? Because I did see Edgar in a picture. He looked quite large.
Yeah, he was small. He was only about 5 kilos. He was a tiny little piglet. He was only about 5 weeks old, and he was covered in pig poo, and he'd just come from the pig farm where he was going to be grown out and turned into bacon. Heaven forbid. I think that was one of the most profound things I remember in those early days when I was in the stable with rubbing his tummy, and I was well and truly a vegan by then. I thought, my gosh, how could I have ever eaten your kind? He's just like getting his tummy rubbed and just absolutely in heavenly bliss. Like, he was like, well, this is where I was always going to be. I was always meant to be like this. And like, maybe he was always meant to be like that, and maybe he was the push that came into my life, because I without Edgar, I would never have started Edgar's Mission. And people often refer to me as the founder, but I truly believe I'm only the co-founder, and the most important one to start the mission was dear Edgar.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So then what happened with getting the funding? So obviously you needed to get some funding to start the...
Yeah, this is incredible. People often ask me, you're so successful, what's your roadmap? How did you do it? I want to emulate you. Don't follow my roadmap, because there was none. It's really, I think it's probably good, because if I actually had had a roadmap, I would never have done it. People often say, if you could give yourself some advice, when you start, honestly, if I knew then what I know now, there is no way known I would have started Edgar's Mission. There's no way known I would have thought I could do what I'm doing now, but literally, like Edgar Alan Pig grew, the sanctuary grew, and my confidence in that grew, although I was still not incredibly confident, but it seems to be working. When I started Edgar's Mission, I had these grand plans that I was going to fund it myself, and I was never going to have volunteers, and never going to rehome an animal, and never take a donation. And then I woke up, that's not going to really work. And one of the hardest things I found was actually asking for help. I think that's one of the hardest things, to actually ask for help, to acknowledge that I can't do this. A lot of what I do comes from my dad, who was incredibly tough. And I think he recognized from a young child that I had a soft heart, and he's in his hardness. It was his way of trying to make me tougher in the world. And he always said to me, Itzy, that was my nickname, Itzy, you've got to pay your own way in this world. You cannot expect anyone to do it for you. You make your bed, you've got to lie in it. So in the very early days, of Edgar's Mission, I funded it all myself through working at the lolli factory. And I would go and do outreach with my pig, and people would come up, and I'd be talking to them, and I'd be, really touched by what I was doing. And they would want to give me money. And I wouldn't have a donation box on the table, because I didn't want people to feel awkward that they had to give me money. My dad said, you've got to pay your own way. But people wanted to do it. And I realized how much it meant for people to be able to help. And for me to say no was actually not nice for them. So I begrudgingly popped a donation box on the table, and people started putting money in it, and it allowed me to expand the work that I did. So and gratitude is always there, and my eternal gratitude to everyone who donates and supports Edgar's Mission is always, my undying thanks is always there. I ring donors up and thank them. And they're actually thanking me for the ability to do what we do. So this mutual appreciation society going on the front. So I'm incredibly grateful that people do it. And I think one of the successes of Edgar's Mission is that we rarely ask for funds. One of the things early in my life, I remember it sat really well with me. People won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how you make them feel. And I know very early on before I started Edgar's Mission, I'd donate to some charities, and you'd make a donation and they'd go, really, can we have some more? Or they'd send you things to you with your name on it and expecting you to do, and that really made me feel uncomfortable because I was a factory worker and you didn't have a lot of money. So I was always very mindful about doing that. So when we do ask for funds, people know that we actually really do need them. And I am blown away by the support, and from people that I don't even know, who haven't even met me. You know, when they give me a donation, it's saying, I believe in you, I trust you. And that just really blows me away. And it's something that really doesn't sit light on me, that I really make sure that they get bang for their buck for what they do and what we do with the charity that they so lovingly support from afar or near, and even the volunteers who give up their time. And it's been really difficult here with COVID restrictions in Victoria, and people are still volunteering and coming to help. And we have our paid staff now as well that can help care for the animals. And you know, we're really much a 24-hour-a-day operation, and we're able to run it. And it's all through the power of kindness. And that, you know, sometimes I just sit back and go, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. How many acres do you have?
153 beautiful picturesque acres.
That is amazing. So now, how did you fund getting those 153 beautiful acres?
When we first started Edgar's Mission, it was on my land. So I owned the land, and it was one of those things that you don't think about at the time. You know, we started the sanctuary, and the sanctuary grew, and I started to think, well, I've also got to think about perpetuity here. I always have this expression, if I get hit by a bus, you know, people would be terribly sad, but they'll get back to work really, really quickly and start looking after the animals. And there's someone there who knows what to do. So I had to start, you know, thinking about that. But in the early days, you know, I did fund everything. And then sadly, my dad passed away at the time when I was thinking of needing to expand Edgar's Mission, and also look at the perpetuity of the organisation, rather than the land being owned by an individual, that the organisation owned it. We have a committee of management that is set there to, you know, take over the reins should I get hit by the bus. And with my dad passing away, he did leave me a small legacy, which I just put into buying this land. And I actually think it's kind of funny in a way that my dad got his ultimate wish, because we would often have deep and meaningful conversations over lunch, my dad and I. He was never a vegan, but he was an animal lover at heart, and I think in another lifetime he would have been a card-carrying vegan, because he was very involved in the law, and he had a really strong sense of justice. And you know, we would have these philosophical arguments back and forward all the time. And he always said to me, he wanted me to be a businesswoman and follow in his footsteps. I said, no, I love animals, I want to play with animals. Well, he's sort of got his wish now. I'm pretty much a businesswoman, you know, running this organization, and his legacy lives on here in that, you know, we're able to secure the land through his funding and donations from members of the public. It's incredible. You know, people even now leave us money in their will. That's just amazing. That is never ever lost on me. We actually have little things around the sanctuary. If you ever come to Australia, you must come and visit.
Oh, I'm coming.
I always work on that thing about actually making people think, or causing people to think, rather than telling them what to do. And there's these little prompts you have around the sanctuary. And this is a bit of a spoiler alert. So if you're going to come to the sanctuary, close your ears. If you're not going to come to the sanctuary, listen, because you'll never get to see this. At the end of the tour, we have this little hut. It's painted red and white, and on the outside of it is this big carnival side banner, and it says it's a big map of the globe on there. It says, come see the world's greatest tool for change. It's free, it's available within. And then you open the door of the little mirror hut, and there's a mirror right at the back staring at you. And the reason the hut is painted in red and white, because they were my dad's colours. He was in the trucking industry, and all his trucks were painted red and white. Everything was red and white in my dad's world. And that's why that it's painted red and white. And I think that's the greatest in a legacy that we can have, is that we are the greatest tool for change in the world. You know, we can say others should do this, and they should do this, and they should do that. We need to listen to our hearts, and we can be the change in the world.
Oh, absolutely. We can be a change in the world, and each one of us can be a change maker. That's exactly why I started this podcast. We all have that opportunity. Some are afraid, some, you know, allow barriers to come. And that's why, you know, my goal through this podcast is to help it be the impetus for those who may want to be a change maker and just don't know where to start. And sometimes you just start without even realizing you've started. It's just doing what feels right. And it just to share something really quick with you that I know you don't know. So I started a foundation in my dad's name called the Applauder Kids Foundation. And so, yes, our organization funds kids to take ongoing lessons that could never afford to take lessons. We fund for up to 15 years for the kids to take dance, acting, singing, instrumental music. And it's in his name and it's his legacy because he was an opera singer. He didn't know about it.
That is so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Because they need a creative, outgoing, ongoing connection, just like all the animals need connection. And that's one of the things we don't really pay attention to as much, right? Like you said, there's a lot of judgment. There's a lot of differences. What I love about what you've created, and there's so many things I want to ask you, is that what I got to see when I first flipped through, and I want to share this with the listeners, is I got to see Ruby, walking around with Calvin swine and them being together. I got to see Tabitha laying with a lamb, and for that minute, Pam, when I thought about the world as a whole, I thought about the fact that animals don't see the differences. They just know that they need to be connected, right? So if you grow them that way, that can happen. So somewhere in the world and society, that changed, right? Because everybody sees the differences in each other. And instead of embracing them, a lot of times we're cruel to them, just like we're cruel to animals because they're different. Certain people are. And, you're teaching not just humans about connection and being kind, but you're also doing that with animals. And they're also kind of the metaphor of why can't humans be like that? Why can't humans be as kind as Tabitha, who's the cat, by the way, and I'll let Pam explain. Who was I think it was a lamb, right? A baby lamb. Does she lay with a baby lamb?
A lamb, a kid goat, whoever's in that incubator, she's there caring for them. She's incredible.
And so, how did you get them to be that? You call them vet nurses, right? Is that the name for them?
It is, and it's really funny. People say, "No, how did you train Ruby to be good with the lambs and not chase the chickens?" And we didn't. We allowed those animals to be all they were ever meant to be. And it's really wonderful that, Ruby's story touches so many people's hearts, because while it speaks to the worst of our humanity, it also speaks to the best. Ruby was a purebred working Kelpie. The chap paid $1,000 for her, expecting to get this champion breed Kelpie who would round up his sheep. But Ruby was more interested in pets and cuddles and rounding up the sheep and not wanting to spoil their fun. He got really cross, to put it mildly, that the dog wouldn't do what she was told to do, and he would beat her, trying to get her into submission to do what he wanted, and it just spiraled down from there. Ruby got more scared and more afraid and wouldn't do what he wanted and would run. He got so angry with her, he took her around to his mate's place to shoot. The guy had his gun ready to shoot Ruby. He aimed it at Ruby, and Ruby just jumped up on him and looked into his eyes, into his soul, and found the goodness of his heart, and the guy could not shoot her. He brought her around to us because he knew that we were the soft hearts, and I had done all the cat and dog rescue all those years ago, and she was just a shadow of who she is today. She was so incredibly skinny. You looked at her sideways and she would wet herself, and we thought, well, look, we'll get the condition on her, we'll get her a bit more confident, we'll find a home for her. But on the run through, Ruby found her calling, and that was to be a tour guide at the sanctuary. She follows me everywhere, except when the tours come, she goes off the car and she does tours around the sanctuary, and it's just beautiful to watch her come. We'll have groups of people. They might be disenfranchised children or abused women, and they'll come, and older people or just the general public. She works the crowd. She goes from human to human, standing, leaning up against their legs, looking into their eyes, and they give her a pat, and then she moves on to the next one, leans against their legs, looks up to their eyes, and she gives them a pat. And she does that with all the people, but she does that with the animals as well. She's never chased our chickens or the other animals. She's quite happy to go through Chicken Village and she'll do coals and watch what they're doing. And the same with the animals. And I remember it was a few years ago, we had a little sick lamb in the vet room, came in, and I was working on the lamb, and Ruby kept following around everywhere, and I just said, "Oh, what are you doing, Vet Nurse Ruby?" And the name just stuck as Vet Nurse Ruby. And then we had another little pussy cat called Stitch, and Stitch was the same. She used to come into the vet room all with our little lambs in the nursery, and she'd curl up with little lambs, so she became Vet Nurse Stitch. And then most recently Tabitha, who at 17 years of age has found her calling as a vet nurse. And this lambing season in Australia was a really, really brutal one. It was bitterly cold. It was incredibly wet. We've had so many lambs, more lambs come in this year than we've had any other year. And some of these lambs are in horrific condition. We needed to put them in an incubator to heat their body temperatures up. And Tabitha would see the incubator come open, and she just jumped in there with the little lammies. And we were a little bit nervous at first, but she just snuggled in there and kept them warm. And it was so beautiful, whether they were little goats or little lammies. She didn't discriminate what they look like. And even Calvin's swine, one of the most beautiful things is they've got a little bed in the little vet room we have. And Calvin sleeps in there, and Tabitha will pop in there, and some goats and a lamb, and they all get in there. And this is really this united species of kindness. And it really is, as you mentioned, inspirational. They don't care what the other looks like. They just know that we all yearn for the connection, that touch. And we see it when we stroke these animals. It gentles them, it lowers their heart, but it also lowers our heart as well. And then there's the helper's high. Being kind feels good, not just the recipient of your kindness, but the giver of the kindness. Mm-hmm. And that works across species, as Tabitha and Ruby and Vetna Stitch all show us, that it doesn't matter who is being kind. It's just cool to be kind.
It so is. And I feel so blessed that I've found you, and I can follow, and I've been on all the tours virtually, and I just love it. And it brings, literally, it makes my heart sing to see what you're doing over there. But so how do you find these animals, or how do they find you?
They do find us. They literally find us. It was one of the things when I started the sanctuary, and I thought, well, how am I going to find the animals to fill the sanctuary? And I had a lovely friend in Murray Bateman, and he just had a very small sanctuary up there, and he said, don't worry. He said, once you put the shingle out there, you've got a sanctuary, they will come, and they will come, and they will come. And he was right. They come, and they come, and they come. Members of the public hear about us if they find little orphan lambs, and there's so many just get found every year. And people think, oh, how do you just find them? And look, they can fall off the back of trucks, or little cheeky buggers, they'll get through a fence and they just run and run and run, and then they get so confused they don't know where they are, and they're miles from where they're meant to be. But the goodness of the human heart comes to the fore. They see an animal in trouble, an individual animal in trouble, and they realize what they choose to do next will determine whether that animal lives or dies. And over, the goodness of the human heart kicks in, and they take that little animal and want to seek a good outcome for them. We have animals that come to us from pounds throughout the country who have been lost and end up in pounds. Sometimes it might be someone has passed away and they can no longer care for farmed animals. They'll come to us. We tend not to take owned animals because we do have to rehome the animals that come here. If you think, we've been going almost 20 years, we've had maybe 5,000 animals have come through our sanctuary gates. If we kept every single one of them, we would be diminishing significantly our ability to care for the ones that we have. So if we can rehome an animal, we do. If they've been here for long term, this is their home. If they've got a disability that another can't care for, this is their home. It's really hard rehoming animals. It kills me because I feel like I'm letting the animals down. But if they come in and they're happy and they're healthy, we can find a wonderful home, and it must be a wonderful home. We set the bar very high. I'd rather miss out on a good home than send an animal to a not so good home, but we do rehome, and that keeps us sustainable with what we're doing. But right now we have over 500 animals at the sanctuary, and that is a lot of work caring for those animals.
Yeah. So how many people work for you? I know you have a lot of volunteers, but how many people actually work for the sanctuary?
As in paid staff, it's around 22 paid staff. Some of them are part-time, and we're a 7-day-a-week operation. The staff knock off in summer now, it's around 2:30, and then we have an after hours. There's 2 people that live on site at the sanctuary, myself and another chap, and we're pretty much the after-hour team of these rescues. We go out and do them, and it's something that does sit heavy on my mind. If I do get hit by a bus, that we can actually cover all those multitudes of jobs that Pam does, because it's a lot of work.
Yes, you are very, very busy, and you are very connected to the mission. One of the animals that I did see very, very first time was Smudge. So Smudge, right? So tell the listeners just about, because Smudge is a special needs animal, right? I mean, he was born.
Yeah.
So tell
Smudge is
Sorry.
Smudge is a little calf. He's an Angus calf, and he was born with a cleft lip, so his lip has failed to form. And in that failure to form, he was unable to suckle from his mother, and he would have perished. We got the call late at night, and we rushed down there straight away to get him. And he was born early that day, so he hadn't had any nutrition all that day. So he was really, really cold. I remember taking off my jumpers and jackets and putting them on Smudge, trying to get him warm and get him back to the sanctuary where we could try and heat him up. When we got him back here, we were flat out getting a temperature on him. He was so cold, and we had to tube feed him for the first few weeks of his life just to get that sustenance in him. And he's grown and he's flourished, and he's so damn cheeky and cute. Everybody loves Smudge, and the way he has responded to the kindness. He just chuffs around the sanctuary now. He'll find his forever home with some other special needs sheep. A lovely little rescued calf we have called Babe, who is actually can't see. She doesn't have she has eyes, but she has no vision, or actually her vision's pretty good, but she can't see. And she has a seeing eye calf who lives with her, Sophie. And Sophie wears a bell around her neck so that Babe knows where to go around the paddock. And that's where Smudge will land when he gets a little bit older. He'll live with those ones.
That's incredible, incredible work. So you also wrote a book, right?
I did. I know. Where did I do that?
Yeah, I thought about that.
This is a collection of the stories that I started to write, and it's one of the things I would love to and I've tried to get in touch with one of my high school teachers who I remember I wrote a story once, and there was an assignment, and we handed it in, and she was going through the corrections, and she was really cross, and she said, you got to put in more effort. She said, there's this piece here, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best pieces I've ever written before. We used to get a mark out of 5. She said, but I can't give it a 5 because the grammar's terrible and the spelling's not so great, but the message there is absolutely brilliant. And I'm thinking, well, that could be mine. It was my piece. And she called me aside after class, and she said, do you know you're a brilliant writer? And I said, well, not really. I don't think I'm a brilliant. I was always maths and science. That was what I consider my forte. I love maths. I love science because I love the logic behind it. I'm very much a logical person. I always, think things through, and I guess that's why I don't need animals. Being kind to them is the ultimate thing you can do. And that sort of guided my principle through life. I thought that was actually probably the easiest path to take maths, because if you just followed logic, it would all fall into place. So English, that was creativity, and you had to think and be your soul. That wasn't really me. And she said to me, you are going to be a great writer. And I said, oh, I don't think so. And she said, you just need to spend more time. She said, why didn't you go back and fix up your spelling and your grammar, because you know all those things? I said, oh, I want to go and ride my horse. And that's the thing. So actually I do have someone check my grammar and my spelling after I write my pieces. And I feel like the lady that does that, she's sort of like my English teacher, because she'll put these, that's the most incredible piece of writing that I've heard. And I don't consider myself a writer, let alone a great writer. I just convey the stories of the animals. And something that links in here is one of my early days in activism. I had to go on radio about pigs and sow stalls, and I'm really nervous, and I'm like, oh, what if I stuff up? And the lady who was with me said, just chill, Pam. She said, if you get confused, just speak from the heart. Just speak from the heart. And that is what I do when I start to write, and I don't know what I'm going to write. I just sit down and I'll think about the animal, and it just sort of comes to me, and the words just flow and flow and flow. And sometimes they won't flow, and it's like, well, okay, that story's not ready to be told now. I'll go away and do something else. And then I'll be out in the paddock, and then it says, hang on, that story's ready to be told. So hang on a minute, I've got to write it down. So I put notes on my phone, and sometimes my mind will wake me up in the middle of the night. I've got a really good story. Hang on, I have to write that down because I'll forget it. So I don't think it's that I'm a writer by any stretch. I read great writers, and I'm nowhere near that. But I convey the stories of the animals, and I hope that authenticity comes through, and that does touch people's hearts and cause them to be in the moment that I am with those animals, and they can feel what I'm feeling. Going back to what I spoke earlier about that time when I was in the stable with Edgar Alan, his tummy, I wanted everyone to take them by their hand and put their hand on his tummy. I can't do that, but hopefully through my writing, I can actually try and guide people to feel those things that I feel and see the things that I see with the animals.
Oh, I can absolutely say that, that's why I asked you earlier beforehand about who writes the Facebook and the messages that you put on social media, because I'm on the ride with you, right? I feel like I'm with you when you're talking about it. And so I know that others have to be feeling that way. So I think you're an exceptional writer, because you can totally take us on the journey with you. So do you plan on writing, are there going to be subsequent books? And the book is called The Gift of Kindness, by the way. And it's available, I believe.
There are, I think it's really a collection of the stories that I've written, getting them together, because I do see a lot of the comments, so you must write a book, I don't know if I'm going to have time, but I would like to try and keep the stories collected together, and so that they could be in perpetuity to hopefully move the world for animals. And there is I am working on some past stories, collecting them together to get a book. So Andrea, if you're listening, I am doing that. I am doing that.
I love it. But your first book is available on Amazon, I believe, right? And is that okay? So that's awesome. So fulfillment, if you had to, the fulfillment, because also there's got to be a little bit of exhaustion. Let's face it. I mean, there's 22 people. There's a huge amount of animals, 500 animals, a huge amount of land to walk to each area. And that's not a lot of staff, paid staff. So from what I'm hearing, you sound so fulfilled, but you must also be exhausted. So how do you balance fulfillment and exhaustion?
Well, I don't think I'm doing very well. One thing that, I'm now starting to, I must actually do better self-care. I'm really looking at doing that, and I'll get there. But it is actually, self-care is so important. And one of the things that I do, I see so much sadness, and I take it in, but I don't let it consume me. And I think that's why I've been able to keep going on through the sadness. Even just a few hours ago, a little kitten, and we don't do cats and dogs anymore, but there was someone from a rescue group had a wee kitten, a premature kitten, was 7 days old, and they needed oxygen, and they put it on Facebook, and they couldn't find anyone with oxygen, and someone said try Edgar's Mission, and we have an oxygen machine here that we had for one of our little goats that we were trying to save. And she called me. I said, yeah, look, we've got an oxygen machine if you want to come up. And so I was working through tonight with the little kitten, and unfortunately the little kitten passed away in the wee hours of this morning, and that's incredibly sad. But it's also, you can dwell on that sadness and let it consume you, and that will consume you, and that doesn't help anyone. The animal has passed, and we must honor their passing by going on. And I think, looking after ourselves, looking after other animals. And I think that's how I cope with the grief. I never dismiss it. I always own it, and it must sit with you for a while, and then it stays there, and that you move on from it. You can't take it with you, because it will consume you, and it's not going to change the past. There's a wonderful quote, a lady called Pamela Brown, what is it about, I can't change the past, but I can shape the future. And that is what we must think about, is shaping that future and making it a kinder future. And the serenity prayer, changing the things you can change, accepting the things that you can't change, and having the wisdom to know the difference. And it is actually elevating ourselves to a higher plane to find that best within us, to be the better version of ourselves. And that is what I'm trying to do. And as flawed as I am, and as flawed as we all are, that we can actually try and elevate ourselves to that higher plane, and accept that sometimes we may fall short, and sometimes what we do is enough. We don't always have to be beating ourselves about the head, be better. No. Sometimes what I did today was enough, and be kind to yourself.
Oh, that is so well said, for sure. What I did today is enough. You can be enough. It always doesn't have to be about what I didn't get to, right? Or the list of things that I didn't accomplish, so you feel bad about yourself. What about what you did accomplish today? You got out of bed. That could be an accomplishment for certain people.
Absolutely. And
right.
And in a world with doom and gloom, sometimes we are enough. And to use, when we don't hit the mark, these are opportunities to grow, to look at, okay, well, how can I do that better? Maybe I can't. Maybe they're just the parameters I'm stuck in, and then I'm enough.
Right. That's right. So I could talk to you for 3 more hours, but I know that you've got to get back to your animals. But I can't wait to continue to look at all the wonderful things that Edgar's Mission is doing. So I just have 2 more quick things for you. One is, what's next for Edgar's Mission? Is there something that's next that you're thinking of?
We're looking at getting open post-COVID, which would be really great, and having the visitors back to the sanctuary. We've got 3 beautiful tiny houses here, which will invite a different genre of people in. We live in a real tourist precinct. We're about an hour from Melbourne, the heart of Melbourne. We're about 45 minutes from our Tullamarine International Airport, and I really want to open this up to more visitors coming here, increasing the advocacy that I can do, but I won't get onto the advocacy until the animals are cared for. They will always, whoever's in my care, they are my priority. And it's sort of, inspiring the next generation of caregivers in the sanctuary to have a little bit of Pam in them, so that the sanctuary will go on when I do eventually get hit by that bus.
No bus hitting. No, they need you. They need you. I ask every podcast guest, and the podcast has been going since December 30th of 2020, the same question, because I'm writing a book on the answers, which are all incredible. And it's funny, you touched on it before, but I wonder if I ask you it differently, because you actually said the words before, which was really funny. If you knew then what you know now, right, what would that be? What would you tell what message would you give your younger self with what you know now?
I actually don't want to know. I wouldn't want to know what I know then, because it may frighten me. And I think fear is humanity's worst demon. I go back to something that I read, I think it was in National Velvet or something, in the chapter, throw your heart ahead and follow it. I think that's the best advice. Have the courage to throw your heart ahead and follow it.
So I have interviewed many, many people, and you are the first person to say that. And I think that's another awesome message. Throw your heart ahead. So thank you. That's wonderful. So how can people find you, follow you, and help you?
Help me is put us out of business. Probably the only organization that works towards obsolescence. But until then, our social media is edgarsmission.org.au is our website, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and TikTok and whatever other things are out there. You're asking the wrong person. God's gone. You'll find us out there. Just put in Edgar's Mission and we'll be there somewhere. And
I promise the animals will steal your heart, and you'll just want to go to Australia. I literally cannot wait to finally not be afraid to fly and go all the way to Australia, because one day you're on my bucket list now to go visit, by the way. So
yes, I really look forward to seeing you out here.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to it too. And Pam, I have to thank you. Thank you for all the work you're doing. Thank you for sharing your heart with me today. I hope you'll come back and you'll give us an update on what's happening at Edgar's Mission.
Oh, thank you. And I really thank you for the opportunity to speak for the animals. That is the greatest honor I can ever have. Namaste. Thank you.
Oh, namaste to you. And I'm going to tell everybody what I always say. I say this mantra, and this is a mantra I live by. Today is the day. You cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what are you going to do today to take one small or large step to get yourself closer to your goal? Thank you so much to Pam Ahern and the incredible work at Edgar's Mission, and all the volunteers who are making things happen, and the 22 staff members. And have a great week, everyone. Bye, Pam.
Bye.